Hello, welcome to this week's discussion. Alright, so this is an important week as most of us are going to be tasked at some point with buying a mannequin, audiovisual equipment, and then deciding on whether we want to get purchases with warranties or things or not to go with them. So what we're thinking about this week is that it's not important to get caught up in the nuances in the low and medium to high fidelity simulators whenever we're purchasing them, but to think about the most important things to know, like what the prices are, what kind of decisions we're going to make, and how we're going to make them. So let's explore these things now. Right, this week we're going to talk about our major considerations when purchasing a mannequin for our programs or centers, what warranties cost, and how we're going to use them if we need them. Right, and we will also talk about programming versus running on the fly for a scenario, or said another way, model-driven versus user-driven or directed scenarios. And we will touch on some key considerations for AV systems. So there is an ever-growing body of technology and types of simulation-based learning products coming out and coming available. So let's do a recap on some of the most popular ones. Right? Human patient simulators. Right? These are our mannequins or simulators that look like people. Right? We also have standardized patients. These are our patient actors. We're seeing more use of virtual reality and virtual reality, which is our augmented reality, sometimes it's called, where we use the technology that gives us the visual cues as well as tactile feedback whenever we're integrating the user into a simulated experience. There's also computer-based flat screen, or sometimes called virtual simulations, that we do on computers. Sometimes they use avatars where the patient or the students move around to take care of patients in a virtual world. Right, and then there's task trainers, which are kind of where simulation got its start. And these are our static, very specific purpose pieces, often of mannequins, right, that are used just to do a very particular skill. Like IV starts are here, like an ET tube insertion training. Simulators, you're going to hear the discussion of fidelity when we talk about them. Fidelity is our level of complexity when we're relating to how realistic something is. Right? It's kind of, think of it as a continuum. All right? From our low fidelity task trainers, we look at those, we know right away that they're fake. All right? They're often just like an arm for an IV start trainer, things like that. All the way up to high fidelity, these are our simulators that have all the bells and whistles and all the fancy stuff. Some people you'll hear when we talk about fidelity bringing more into the discussion than just the simulator, but for today and for this talk, we're just going to stick to simulators and our mannequins. Alright, typical when we're talking about cost and purchasing of the mannequin, the higher up in fidelity you get, alright, the more it's going to cost. Alright, you're going to pay more to purchase those bells and whistles. They often take more to operate them, a little bit more technology savvy folks. And to maintain them, it costs more. All right, so consider what your center needs. Do you need a whole fleet of high fidelity simulators if you happen to be blessed to afford them? Or do you need a mix of all of these things? All right, and what can you buy now versus maintain over time? So let's keep exploring this some more. All right, what we need to do is consider what's the right tool for the right job. All right, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the different types of simulators that we have and what all they can do with all their bells and whistles that are out there today. Our best advice to you, though, is to think about what scenarios you're going to be running, what kind of students you're going to have, and what do you have your mannequins need to be able to do in order to meet the objectives of the learners or the program. Think about what new programs may be coming down the line too. Are there people who are going to be added to your schools or that you want to bring into your market in the future? Right? Make a list of the kind of things that you need a simulator to be able to do to meet those kinds of objectives for those groups of learners, and then start talking to vendors about what they have in way of simulators that can do those things. Right? So Michael Seropian and Bonnie Driggers from OHSU for years did a workshop about how to plan for a simulation center. Right? They said, and rightfully so, most places buy, then think, then plan. Right? They advocate for the opposite though. You need to think, plan, and then buy. It is so cool that we have mannequins that do things like a laryngospasm, but do I really need to care if I'm just teaching undergraduate nursing as a professor? Not really, right? Might I care as an MP professor or a CRNA teacher, right? I might, right? So my job as the curriculum guider for a simulation center or a director or manager, whatever your role may be, right, is to know what is going to be taught in the curriculum and then matching the mannequin or the simulators for the capabilities to meet those objectives. Right? Then we decide what to buy. Right? So many centers may get money from capital budget or grants or funds, right? And they get excited to buy the equipment. So they go ahead and they get top of the line, everything that they can afford, the best that they can get for the money that they have available to them. And then it sits and sits for a variety of reasons. It may be too much. It may not meet the needs of the students. Faculty may be intimidated to use it, right? And it collects dust. So don't fall into this trap. So another thing that we need to look at is maintenance on these things, all right? It's not cheap, all right? A key thing to ask whenever you're purchasing one to the vendor is what kind of support are you going to give me if it breaks down in the middle of a busy week of scheduled simulations? Ask this question and record your responses from each vendor. Ask about what comes with the maintenance contract. What does it really mean to have their contract with that company, right? If you have only one simulator or in a busy simulator your mannequin goes down, how quickly can you get it fixed? Right? Will a technician come out and do it for you? Does the company provide a replacement like a loaner to you to use with a box to ship it back for your broken mannequin? Right? If you have some kind of tech support and a human in this area or somebody on your team who does, do you need it? All right, some companies will talk you through a fix on the phone. Others will help you, all right? And others will tell you that if you open up your mannequin and start messing with the internal parts, you negate your warranty. All right, you want to know these details because they're going to factor into your decision about purchasing the maintenance and warranties that come with them. For instance, here at the RISE Center at RMU, we have a technician whose name is Chuck, and he's very adept at fixing things and manages some of our simple fixes whenever we can with our simulators. However, we also have instances where we need more than just Chuck. Right? For instance, we had a simulator, a high fidelity simulator that was on the road every week for a grant. The cost of the warranty for this particular simulator was $6,000 a year. We paid it for the years of the grant because that mannequin had to be sure to work. It was the one that was dedicated for the grant to be used. Right? The $6,000 was for a premium service of overnighting the mannequin to get fixed, and they would give us a loaner one. Right? But think about, do we need to keep paying the $6,000 a year after the grant is over? Probably not, because it will be back in our center. We'll be able to maintain it. We'll be able to use backups if it goes down, right? But for the needs of the grant, it was the right thing to do, right? And also, what do we need to consider about planning too? What if we ever, God forbid, lost Chuck? He got employed somewhere, he retired, who knows, right? We need to think about who are other people who could cross-train to learn those skills, or would we have to hire to replace him, things like that. If you have a whole fleet of mannequins, it's a good idea, too, to keep track of their usage. So number each one and keep track of how many hours a semester or a year it's being used, like an inventory system. Whenever we first started buying simulators, we were told by the manufacturers that they depreciate at about 20% per year. So in other words, we should plan on replacing mannequins every 5 years if they're getting regular heavy use. Now, if you're a clever sim operations person, you would not buy all your mannequins in year 1 because you will just have to replace them all theoretically in year 5. Right? You would try and budget or squirrel away a replacement fund for your mannequins so that you could replace a mannequin and over time so that you're not doing them all in year 5. Right? This sounds good, except sometimes the way budgets work at organizations or universities, they make us spend our whole budget every year. And if we don't spend it, they take the money back, right? And they might even decrease their budget for the next year by that amount because they thought we didn't need it when we really do, right? So work with your organizations to make a replacement plan or a long-term maintenance plan for your simulators. All right, some organizations, these are also considered capital budget purchases, meaning that you'll have to appeal to your larger organization to purchase them for your center, and you'll have to justify the cost, and then they'll weigh your request against all the other capital requests of that organization or school. Another key piece for you to contemplate is how you're going to replace these big ticket items when the time comes in a manner that doesn't wipe out your whole operating budget for the year. So start planning now, having those conversations. Another thing to consider is how to use the programming of the mannequin. All right, so this is where we talk about the model-directed versus user-directed simulation. All right, these are fancy words for program scenarios versus running on the fly scenarios. A program scenario is set up, turned on, and it runs as it is set, and therefore is model-directed. On the fly scenarios require a user to change the settings on the simulator based on what the participants do. So for instance, if a participant puts oxygen on the simulator, they'll increase the oxygen saturation of the patient. This is user-directed simulation. I think many of us are very happy we got the mannequin that we can turn on and run a scenario. Right? But there's going to come a time, if it hasn't already, that you may not have every scenario you want and need in the package that came with it. Alright, so you may need to start learning how to program them or do running on the fly. Programming the mannequin may seem like it's a bridge too far for our technical skills, but today, programming is actually much easier than it used to be. Right? The advantage of programming a scenario is that every student really does get the same experience. When you have many educators in a course running their own scenarios, and many of you will have this model in your center, there is nothing stopping them from going rogue or changing things slightly, tweaking, or changing them a lot for whatever reason. Right? It might seem like a good idea at the time, but it is also going to negate your ability to be able to evaluate and compare one student to another or to the whole class. It also negates your ability to evaluate your curriculum for holes or missed items, right? If the scenario is not the same each time because it's getting tweaked on the fly. Programming a scenario will also decrease the work of the operator. If you are a one-stop shop or a lone dancer in your shop of your center, you do not need to be changing the settings. Right? You have to be the setter-upper, the voice of the patient, the physician, the charge nurse. Remember everything that's happened in this scenario, so now you can turn around and debrief it when it's over. Right? You do not have to manipulate every vital sign change on the mannequin if it's programmed, so it really does help. So when you buy a mannequin, have the salesperson show you about the programming and how it works. Ask about training for programming on your model and the software that it uses, and you'll want to know how to do this. We're going to stop there for the first part of this lesson, and I'll wrap up in the second video for the rest.